Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. In today's little recording that I have, we're going to be going over the Weather Prediction Center data from today all the way through Wednesday. So if you don't know what the Weather Prediction Center does, the Weather Prediction Center essentially forecasts the amount of precipitation that an affected area could see. For example, if a place is expected to get a boatload of precipitation. Depends on, the timing and this and that. But if an area is expected to get a boatload of precipitation with other factors coming into play, the Weather Prediction Center will essentially be like, hey, that place is going to get an X amount of rainfall. We're going to place this amount, this we're going to place this amount of probability, uh, like the categorical outlook. We're going to place that in this area. That's what they do. They're also like the Storm Prediction Center, where the Storm Prediction Center, if they're like, oh hey, severe weather, it's over there, we're gonna place whatever risk over there. So what the Weather Prediction Center essentially does, but it's used for precipitation instead of severe weather. Now uh, there are four risk zones that the Weather Prediction Center can issue: marginal, slight, moderate, and high. This is like the old SPC outlook when it used to just be like just marginal, well not marginal, but general thunderstorm, uh, slight, moderate, high, kind of stuff like that. Obviously, a marginal risk didn't exist back then, but an enhanced risk didn't exist either. So it's just marginal, uh, slight, moderate, and high risk. Today, for the national forecast chart, you can see that there are a lot of lows, a lot of low pressure systems over here. Um, you see that there's a low in British Columbia. There are a clustering of lows associated with cold fronts and dry lines from Montana to the Wyoming-Montanan border, all the way up to the triad of Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas. There's also a low pressure system back in Idaho, two areas of low pressure connected with dry lines and cold fronts in California. There is a low pressure in Mexico, a low in Alabama, a low off the coast of Georgia and South Carolina and Florida, basically. Uh, and there is also a low in smack dab South Carolina. There also is a low that is producing some beautiful satellite imagery off the coast of Long Island and Cape Cod or whatever, and it's producing some rain showers and thunderstorms. There's rain showers and thunderstorms from Canada all the way down to Florida and down to the Texas-Mexico border. There also is mixed precipitation expected in kind of like the Rocky Mountains and stuff like that. Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana, all the way up into Canada. There also is heavy rain and flash flooding possible in the red region, from Montana to North Dakota to South Dakota to Nebraska. It's kind of like overlapped, but you could see it over there. And then severe thunderstorms are also possible from South Dakota to Wyoming to Colorado to Nebraska to Kansas to Oklahoma and to Texas. So we have a a lot of things to go on. Now that's for today. Tomorrow, the severe risk kind of fades. Um, there still is mixed precipitation from Idaho to Washington State to Montana to Wyoming, all the way up to Canada. Uh, Rain and some potential thunderstorms are expected from Montana to Florida and also into the Mid-Atlantic region and from Oklahoma to Texas to New Mexico to the Mexico border. There are a ton of ton of areas of low pressures in California, New Mexico, Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, South Dakota, and Idaho. Also, two in Canada, uh, one that will be traversing into the United States, one that's in the one that's on the border between West Virginia and Kentucky, and one on the border between Georgia and Florida. There are a couple of high pressure systems, including one in the Great Lakes region, dispersed across the United States. And then you got day three. Severe risk actually returns. As you can see, severe risk is possible on Monday from Colorado to Nebraska to Kansas. There will be thunderstorms and rain all the way from Washington to Florida, Washington State to Florida, up through the mid-Atlantic and into the Northeast. So essentially from one side of the country to the other side of the country is expected to be rainfall and some potential thunderstorms, with mixed precipitation still expected from Idaho to Wyoming to Vermont, or sorry, Idaho to Wyoming to Montana, and then the Canada border. Now there are a ton of high pressure systems. There are two differing opposing pressure systems, one located in Arizona, the other located in California, so that may cause a pressure gradient. There's also another one, both are in Colorado. There's a high pressure and low pressure associated in Colorado, so that could cause a wind gradient. There is a low in Northern California, and then another high and a low situated close to each other in Wyoming. There is a high pressure system on the border between North and South Dakota, a high pressure system on the border between the UP and LP of Michigan. There's a high pressure system off the in the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, whatever you choose, it's fine. There also is a low pressure system, lows that are associated with a cold front extending from kind of the Memphis area to offshore of the Atlantic to really in the northern Atlantic. There also is a low pressure system up in Canada, north of Maine. That's for day three. Uh, this is Monday, Sunday, and today. So let's go to the excessive rainfall. This is today's outlook. As I said, there is a risk of heavy precipitation from Montana to uh, North Dakota to South Dakota to Nebraska and also to Wyoming. That's today. Sorry that I'm making it so late in the evening. I know it's been happening already, but I'm busy, and if there still is straggling severe weather, I'm still going to make it. Even flash flooding content as well. I'll still make it. So again, there's a slight risk for the kind of, I don't know, Rockies, like Northern Rockies, whatever those mountains are in Montana and all that stuff. And then there's a day two slight risk actually of precipitation from Georgia to Florida and kind of just in the southeast. Day three, there's nothing, which means that the probability of rainfall exceeding flood guidance is less than 5%. That's good to hear. Then there's day four, so a surge of precipitation is expected to come back by Tuesday for New Mexico and Texas. And, there's a broader marginal risk extending from the Mexico border to the Canada border, actually, and exceeding into Canada. And really, same thing for Wednesday also. There's a marginal risk extending from Mexico all the way up to Canada and going past the international borders. And also, there is still a slight risk for New Mexico and Texas, just shifted a little bit southeast. So let's go to today's outlook. So there were two different updates. There was a 16Z update and then a 23Z update. I'm going to read from the bottom to the top because the top portions of this discussion, these discussions from the Weather Prediction Center, usually have updates. They have updates first, and then they have the previous discussion. The previous discussion is at the bottom. So we're going back in time and seeing essentially what the Weather Prediction Center has told us, and then we'll go into one update and then into the other. And we're gonna do that. We always do that. We always read the previous discussion and then the updates. Because it's just more orderly, it gives more order, and it's chronologically more accurate. It's not bouncing around. and having misinformation going here and there. So we're gonna read the previous discussion first. So previous discussion: the Northern Rockies to the plains. Maintained the slight risk across portions of Montana as a mid and upper level system makes its way northward slowly today. The system should foster locally intense rainfall rates, especially in the eastern portion of the slight risk area, given moderately steep lapse rates and some potential for enough breaks in cloud cover. The high-resolution ensemble forecasts neighborhood probabilities of exceeding 1 inch per hour in the 30 to 50% range and 2 inches per hour around 10%. This results in HREF FFG exceedance probabilities broadly over 25%. The rapid refresh forecast system shows a similar evolution in roughly the exact same area, but was not quite as high with its probability of exceedance or with the probability of 1 inch per hour rainfall. Farther west, the instability is expected to be weaker, but the greater coverage of rainfall looks to offset the instability shortfall. As mentioned previously, the flood risk should gradually transition from flash flooding to aerial flooding and river flooding as you go west across the state of Montana. A marginal risk area extending eastward from Montana and then southward from the northern plains and mid-Mississippi Valley was largely left in place given the signal in the HREF for locally heavy rainfall rates within an elongated moisture plume originating from the southeastern United States. It was done so despite convective details remaining uncertain. The most organized convective threat may end up over portions of Nebraska and South Dakota, given a highly diffluent flow aloft and low-level convergent flow. However, there are also signals of organized convective clusters within the moisture axis anywhere from Arkansas to Iowa, and while convection is unlikely along this entire axis, where it does develop, rainfall rate potential will be high enough for localized flash flooding. Southeast. Latest numerical guidance continued to show locally heavy rainfall today and tonight along and south of a boundary moving in from the north. There is a bit of a westward expansion in the western extent, shown by the HREF and RRFS of the 1 inch per hour probabilities and the probability of exceedance. As a result, the marginal risk was expanded westward into parts of Georgia to Alabama. Alright, so here's the 16Z update. This is the first update that the Weather Prediction Center would be making. 16Z update. Tennessee Valley. Current radar and RAP mesoanalysis shows a weak 925 millibar circulation over central Tennessee that is caught between the front to the north and the low-level west-southwesterly over Mississippi and Alabama. The 12Z Birmingham sounding shows the atmosphere remaining weakly capped with a 1.9-inch precipitable water value and greater than 500 joules per kilogram of mixed layer convective available potential energy, with relative humidity at low to mid levels greater than 90%, and a warm cloud layer approaching 12,000 feet in depth. A nearby outflow boundary is also moving south into southern Tennessee this morning and is likely to trigger additional heavy thunderstorms this afternoon. There is not much in the way of vertical wind shear, so thunderstorms will be fairly short-lived, but up to 2.5-inch per hour rainfall rates this afternoon and evening atop the soils that remain quite saturated led to an extension of the marginal risk in the southeast as far north and west as south-central Tennessee. Otherwise, some minor tweaks were made to the marginal risk in the southeast and northern and central plains, as well as the slight risk in Montana based on latest 12Z HREF and 12Z convective allowing model guidance. The threat areas and rationale provided by the night shift remain in good shape as of this update. Now, the most recent update, 23Z. Based on observational trends, we expanded the slight risk into portions of western South Dakota and the marginal risk into northeast Colorado. Ongoing convection in these areas is showing some signs of training, resulting in an isolated to scattered flash flooding risk. the greatest coverage of higher rainfall rates is expected over western South Dakota, and we do expect to see some flash flood guidance exceedance here over the next several hours as convection gradually shifts east while also backbuilding into the southerly low-level flow. Recent high-resolution rapid refresh runs indicate localized totals around 3 inches, and that seems plausible. Period. Nice. So a we do have risks of rainfall. That's for today. This is for tomorrow. Again, slight risk uh, in the southeast, and then a marginal risk extending from the southeast to the Tennessee Valley, to the Midwest, to the Northern Plains, and also Canada. And there's also one that's separate from the other in Mexico. So, previous discussion. Any heavy to excessive rainfall, this is for tomorrow, by the way, any heavy to exceeding rainfall should be located in or near a plume of anomalous moisture that will extend from Montana into the southeastern United States. Large-scale forcing is more subtle outside of the northern plains and the Rockies, but there should be some weak shortwave energy embedded within the weak flow that will make them difficult or impossible to time. As this shortwave energy encounters a late-day atmosphere with most unstable CAPE values in excess of 3,000 joules per kilogram, from the plains into the Mississippi Valley and parts of the southeastern United States, storms have the potential to produce very intense rainfall rates that will approach or exceed flash flood guidance along this entire corridor. A large and generally unfocused marginal risk still seems to handle the localized nature of the flash flooding risk that should exist. The Montana portion of the marginal risk has the strongest synoptic forcing as a mid to upper level system gradually moves north of the border, keeping the western part of the state in lingering wraparound rainfall before gradually tapering off. That's the previous discussion, but here we go. This is the most recent update. Southeast. A nearby frontal boundary will become the focus for yet more strong thunderstorms over much of the southeast on Sunday. Just south of the front in southern South Carolina, southern Georgia, and northern Florida, this region is a reservoir of greater than 2 inches of precipitable water values that are available thanks in large part to a southerly IVT, inverted trough, I think, that contains moisture originating from the western Caribbean Sea. Area averaged soundings suggest a sufficient unstable atmosphere, i.e. 1,000 joules per kilogram, greater than of mixed layer Cape, well saturated 1,000 to 500 millibar columns, and warm cloud layers up to 14,000 feet deep in some cases. The key in determining the full extent of the flash flooding threat will be how much cloud debris from Saturday and Saturday night's thunderstorm activity lingers into Sunday. That said, the weak capping inversions should allow for thunderstorms to develop as early as late morning, and soils in the area remain rather saturated following such an active week-long stretch of heavy rainfall. In collaboration with several southeastern in collaboration with several southeast weather forecast offices, a slight risk was added this cycle given the potential for scattered instances of flash flooding. Also, IVT stands for Integrated Water Vapor Transport. I just looked it up. I thought it meant inverted trough. No, it didn't. We all make mistakes, and that's okay. West Texas. A marginal risk was introduced this cycle given the growing consensus of global models and convective allowing models that were hinting at thunderstorms firing over the Davies Mountains and along the dry line. Precipitable waters surged to over 1 inch in these areas as low-level southeasterly flow introduces additional 850 millibar moisture flux into the region and a sheared 500 millibar vortmax approaching from northern Mexico. Sufficient instability also appears to be present, with MU Cape up to 1,000 joules per kilogram expected to be available. West Texas continues to have locally sensitive soils in the wake of recent rainfall as well. And given these factors, a marginal risk was introduced for a localized flash flooding threat in West Texas Sunday afternoon and evening. Excuse me. So this is Sunday's risk. Monday, we are expected to get a little bit of a reprieve as we don't have any precipitation contours available. There is nothing there, thankfully. So Monday, we're starting off great. The probability of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance is less than 5%. There remains some hints in the latest 12T guidance that the overall risk of excessive rainfall is not zero over the plains from Kansas into Colorado. Models show a low-level axis of moisture and instability moving northward on Monday afternoon, but the placement of the heaviest thunderstorm activity remains unclear. In addition, portions of the Mid-South may also be at risk for excessive rainfall, but the guidance remains murky on where thunderstorms will initiate. And given these reasons, the Day 3 extended rainfall outlook remains free of risk areas for the time being. Thank God. However, that's all expected to completely turn around to its old ways by Tuesday. Tuesday. I don't know why I'm laughing. I shouldn't be laughing. Tuesday and Wednesday. There are both slight risks for portions of southeastern New Mexico and western Texas. So, awesome. Cool. Anyways, so confidence, this is Tuesday and Wednesday. Confidence has increased on the Gulf-sourced moisture plume into the southern Rockies and drifting east over the southern high plains to West Texas to warrant upgrades to slight risks of excessive rainfall for both days 4 and 5 for eastern New Mexico into western Texas, with the day 5 focusing a bit east of day 4. Warm and moist air will advect along a low-level convergence zone, with early June heating allowing for heavy convective activity. Yes, it's going to be June by Monday, and then June 2nd is Tuesday, and June 3rd is Wednesday. This focus will merely drift east over Texas late in the week, while the northern focus shifts from the northern plains to the Great Lakes. A cold front pushes into tropical humid air over Florida Wednesday and Thursday, with heavy rain likely in places. The plume of tropical moisture surging from the central Gulf may interact with remnant fronts and troughs over the central Gulf Coast and cause heavy rainfall late in the week. An eye will need to be kept here as heavy rain is likely, but the focus has shifted back and forth from the Florida Panhandle to East Texas, with southern Louisiana being the current focus in between. High temperatures will be above normal under the upper ridge axis from the northern plains and upper Midwest, midweek to the Great Lakes and Northeast late in the week. Temperatures remain below average over the southern plains and the Rockies middle to late next week due to cloud cover and rain. Seasonably hot conditions will persist for the desert Southwest. That's it. That's it. That will be it. Uh, so. Yeah, that was the Weather Prediction Center's extended rainfall outlooks, or EROs, from today to tomorrow to Monday to Tuesday to Wednesday. So it was pretty good. Pretty good, nice information. And what I really like about the Weather Prediction Center, what I like about all the centers that are involved in the meteorological field is their figurative language sometimes. Like the way that they describe, let's say, a shortwave trough moving through the area, the way they describe that can be so like picture perfect and so interesting. The way that they describe these things really is something to look at and to understand. It's very cool. And it's just an observation I've been making. But yeah, so anyways, that's it, really. That's really it. So I have nothing else to say other than the fact that I hope y'all have a great weekend. All right, keep on checking.